Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable. Reliance Mutual Fund and CNBC TV 18 present Mutual Fund Day. Mission Prosperity.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Good financial planning is important in a marriage when you're looking to secure a future together. Indeed, personal debt and financial ambitions can test a marriage, so what should one do to establish a solid financial framework for the family? That's the topic we are discussing here on our special show, Mutual Fund Day Life Hacks. I'm Ritu Bhandari and I'm joined by our financial experts today who will explore financial planning options for newly wed couples. Let's welcome our experts, Arun Sundaresan, Product Head at Reliance Nippon Life Asset Management Limited, and Karthik Javeri, CFP and Director, Transcend Consultancy. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us on the show today. Newlywed couples, that's the focus of the show today. So, first up, when should you have a conversation? Is it important to have a conversation about your financial history and background before you enter a marriage? Because that's a subject that not many people are comfortable discussing with each other today. Arun?
I'm not too sure if you need to have that conversation before the marriage, but after the marriage, yes. And when do you need to have it? I would say probably, couples should settle down. It's not the urgent thing. They understand each other. Maybe even financial preferences, they need to understand as they go along, but that can wait a while, not that it has to be done immediately before the wedding or immediately afterward. Let them settle down first.
All right. Karthik, if one has a significant personal debt already in place, should you be disclosing that to your partner before you enter a wedding or a lifetime commitment?
Absolutely, yes. Financial insecurity is the pretty much largest problem around the world. It cascades into a multiplicity of problems as time goes on. So, to cut a long story short, basically what happens is, if you start talking about your money, you need to know while other things are okay, that the least you should have in your life is financial stress. So yes, debt is a very important thing to talk about. And people have debts for all kind of things. For buying an iPhone X, there's a debt. For buying a car, there is a debt. For a home loan, there's a debt. And a big chunk, maybe 70% of the salary or the income is going away to a debt. You should even talk about the financial model of your family in the sense, are you salaried? Are you self-employed? If you're self-employed, what sort of income is coming in? So I think there is a lot of disclosure and it needs to be disclosed in a very, very large fashion, because you need to know, especially in an arranged marriage scenario, that you're going to be comfortable and that you are aware of what the person is broadly doing with his or her money. Right. It's not about the strategy, but are you saving it? Are you a spender? Are you a person who's completely frugal? What sort of lifestyle you have? And money and monetary discussion is absolutely essential.
Also, is it important to have joint accounts for, say, joint goals and perhaps get the name changed on official documents in case one wants to opt for that at the earliest? Does name change in case of a woman impact her investments that she made as a single person? Would you like to throw some light on that, Arun?
See, I think that would be a personal choice. Yeah. So it's absolutely okay to continue as per their existing name, or if they want to change name. These are operational in nature. It can be worked out. But what is important is, all this while they may be looking at each other as individuals, their financials as separate accounts, etc. Now, regardless of whether you're going to maintain it separately as an account or joint, etc., you'll have to start looking at a household kind of the balance sheet, the income statements, etc. will have to be looked at together. Right. The rest of it is operational in nature. That can be worked out.
Right. Okay, so let's also talk about goals. A newlywed couple has many goals. Perhaps some of them want to set up a house, want to invest in furniture, electronic gadgets, maybe buy a new car, take a vacation together. So how do you bucket these life goals into, say, short-term, medium-term and long-term from a financial perspective? And how do you link saving up or investing for each of these goals?
Now, if you're looking at a short-term goal, like, what do we do in the next 6 months if you have to buy something, say some refurbishment of furniture, it shouldn't happen that one person spends everything and the other person does all the investments. Because experience shows that things can go wrong, and when things do go wrong, then there becomes a little bit of a financial turmoil. So do everything proportionately. The shorter term goals will have the same objective, saying that we will go into something which is safer and quicker, which is extremely liquid, where you can pull out the money quickly. And if you have medium terms and longer terms goals, both of you start contributing together, so that over a period of time you can look at a complete basket of funds, a complete basket of investments or a portfolio, which will help you for your medium, long-term goals and all of them together.
Right.
But everything proportionate, that's the key word that I'd like to put forward, and do it jointly. Yes.
But how do you define short, medium and long in terms of the number of years? Maybe anything under 3 years would be short term?
So again, purely a perspective.
Yes.
So there are different avenues you can use to plan for them. But important thing is to start, and the earlier you start, the better, and it will make a substantial difference.
Okay. Yeah. So let's also talk about the various avenues of investment. Let's look at say short-term goals only first. What are the various avenues of investing? What are the best options that one can put one's money in?
So see, what happens is when you're talking short term, let's say anywhere from as much as, let's say, 1 month to maybe 1 year, or like Arun said, perspectives, right? Then you don't want any volatility in that kind of category. So then your best bets are things like your recurring deposits, if you're comfortable with that, or another interesting option that you have liquid funds, you have got short-term bond funds, which are great options. For your medium term, then you've got categories right from MIPs to balance funds. There's quite a variation that you have there, again depending on the time frame. So if you had about 3 years, I'd say MIPs, which have about 20-25% equity exposure. Going forward, if you had about 4-5 years, you go to balance funds. You have something beyond 5-7 years, maybe we go into equity funds. So that way, depending on the need that you have, the need that you identify yourself, those SIPs can go into these categories of funds, and you can sort of distribute the entire inflow into your bank account into these little buckets, aggregate them, and again, both of you do that. So both of you spend for household expenses, utilities, maintenance, running, groceries, whatever it be, and both of you should invest. So that should be a great way to go ahead and build a huge amount of capital and corpus in the years to come.
All right, but as a married couple, you have some joint goals and you have some independent goals as well. One person might want to pursue some sort of higher education or qualification. One person might want to, say, buy a piece of jewelry and both of you together may want to purchase something like a house or whatever. So how do you balance these individual goals, and are SIPs the best route, or are there other options that you'd like to suggest?
First step would be to identify these goals very distinctly, right? When are they going to occur? How much you would require for that? And then, depending on whether it's going to be short term, medium term, long term, etc., what kind of asset class and therefore products you can get into, right? Ultimately, who's going to contribute to that? Should it be proportionate? Should it be that individual saving for one's requirement and for the joint requirement, both of them contribute together? Will be an individual choice. Left to me, if my wife has an individual requirement, I would invest for her.
Right.
And I would expect her to invest for me, as a gesture. So that would be my personal choice.
Right. And let's talk a little bit about emergency funds as well.
Right.
What's a good amount to save for an emergency? Is it like, say 1 month, 2 months, 3 months worth of your expenses? What's a good backup to have, and what are the good avenues to invest in for backup or emergency funds, Karthik?
So typically 3 months to 6 months is a rule of thumb, the expenditure that you're going to have. Sometimes, depending on the nature of work that you do, you might even be facing some sort of risk from your employment. It might be there, it might not be there. So these concerns are also absolutely real, and they're in our face. So sometimes in that situation, if you feel that the job is going to be at risk, maybe go 1 year up to contingency. Now, where would you park this thing? You would park this thing into a short-term bond fund. I would prefer that as an avenue. You can of course make a fixed deposit also out of it, but perhaps the return is a little better because it's more dynamically managed, and the fund manager is doing a fantastic job to sort of beat the benchmarks and beat the fixed deposit return.
Right. What's your opinion on liquid funds?
So liquid funds obviously are, extremely liquid in the sense that you can redeem your money and get your entire investment back in one day, right? And liquid fund also offer instant redemption. There is a facility called instant redemption where up to 50,000 you can instantly redeem, right? So these are great ways to manage, and whatever money that you foresee that you may require in short notice, you can keep it in liquid funds. They could be considered as a good alternative for savings bank account and any other comparable investments.
Okay, so let's spend a little time on long-term goals as well. One of them is retirement, which many people put off for a later stage in life. So give some do's and don'ts to young newly married couples on retirement planning. Karthik, would you like to start, and then Arun, you can join in as well.
Definitely don't buy a pension policy.
Okay.
Because that's most akin to retirement. What happens is it's not most efficient for your money. You might even buy a ULIP pension policy. So while you are accumulating the money, it's a great idea because your money is growing over a period of time. But at the end of it, what's going to happen is that you'll only get about 1/3 of that as tax-free. But the rest of that you'll have to firstly buy an annuity. You get a very small amount of money, and whatever you get is also taxable. So to that extent, even with a long-term mutual fund, you have a brilliant facility called a systematic withdrawal plan. So I would suggest accumulate your money into that. And once that money is accumulated, depending on your need during retirement years, you can do an SWP. And that's what a lot of retired and senior citizens are doing even today. But by far, mutual funds and equity portfolios, hands down, will create a fantastic portfolio for you. You can even have blue chip stocks. And from blue chip stocks you can start doing SWPs. I mean, you can start, these days you have technology, and you can start slicing a portfolio every month, every quarter, and pay yourself. And that's a great way to build retirement planning corpuses.
Right. Apart from retirement planning, the other long-term goal is funding higher education for children in the future. So, Arun, your do's and don'ts for that goal?
So, obviously start as early as possible because the longer the time you have, even with small investments, you can achieve a lot, right? So, that is a must-do, and SIP in a mutual fund can be a good way that could possibly give you potentially higher return over a period of time. Closer to your goal, move away from equity and get into debt-related products. So you will have to avoid event risk at that particular point in time. You could have done a fantastic job getting better returns for the entire period. Something happens, something goes wrong. At the time when the goal is due, then all the good efforts could be negated. So therefore, closer to the goal, one has to move away from equity and get into more of debt-related products.
All right. Sound advice there from both of our financial experts. Let's take a short break at this point, but when we come back, the conversation around financial planning for newlyweds continues right here on Mutual Fund Day Life Hacks on CNBC TV 18.
Reliance Mutual Fund and CNBC TV 18 present Mutual Fund Day, Mission Prosperity.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Welcome back to Mutual Fund Day Life Hacks. On the show today, we are doing financial planning and goal setting for newlywed couples. Gentlemen, one of the dreams that newlyweds have is to own a house together. So a lot of young couples are dreaming of investing in realty. Is it a good time to be investing in the real estate sector? And what's your advice to young couples?
If it is the first house, you're not considering this as an investment, you want a roof over your head, it's always a good thing to go about, do that, right? People could have very different views, like I would be better off renting and not taking a house on my own. That's again an individual choice, but when it comes to buying a property for living, right, you don't have to look at it as an investment per se. But having said that, you need a big corpus to buy that. The financial planning as to how you will go about doing that, that's something that requires planning.
Right.
So again, you'll have to figure out when you want to do and what could be the cost and how you'll go about achieving that together as a family. That needs to be worked out.
So Karthik, to buy or to rent, what's your view?
So I would definitely say buying is a very good idea. However, it would depend a little bit on your circumstances. For example, if you are from, let's say, Indore, and if you're working in Delhi, and if you're pretty mobile in your jobs, then you may want to choose to buy a place where you might ultimately retire, if you're pretty clear about it. If not, maybe a lot of people even buy it in the city of their primary residence. Right. So go ahead and buy, because it gives you a lot of emotional and mental satisfaction that you have your own roof. it also helps you in future years, and it's a place where you can always come back to. So I would definitely advocate that.
Okay, so let's also spend a little time on tax saving instruments. That's something that all of us require, not just newlywed couples. What are some of the best avenues to invest in for saving tax, Arun? And let's not forget that we want these instruments also to create wealth for us in the long term.
Yeah, in mutual fund you have equity linked saving schemes, what we call as ELSS. These are 100% equity schemes. They come with a minimum 3-year lock-in, that's compulsory, and they offer tax benefit under Section 80C. So these are good investment avenues if someone is okay with investing into a 100% equity product.
Right.
Then there are of course a host of other traditional products like PPF or NPS and so many other things. Combination of equity, debt, and what they offer in terms of return, all that varies.
Right.
The advantage about ELSS is that the potential return from equities, which can possibly be quite high over a period of time, along with tax benefits, that is something which can be considered, especially for newly married couple, considering that they are young and they have a very, very long way to go.
So as we close, your one top advice for financial planning, for good financial planning to a newlywed couple, Arun?
So for the newlywed, obviously they will have a lot of expenses. They would want to go for a good holiday, and there could be a lot of gadgets they would want to buy and stuff like that. I would encourage them to do all of that. Right? Ultimately, saving investment is nothing but postponing your current spending to future. You don't have to give away the best part of your life for a future time. Please go ahead and do all that you ever wanted to do. Having said that, also do pay some attention towards what needs to be done, even small attention and some bit of saving, whatever little could be done, that can make a substantial difference. Fairly easy to do, but you will have to pay attention and act on it. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Karthik?
Get into the habit of putting away a certain amount of money. It's a habit. It might pinch to start with. You shouldn't compromise on life. Absolutely, totally agree on that. But start into a habit. And start with a little bit of a habit which is going to pinch you a bit. So if you think 30% is what you can put away out of your money, go 33%, go 35%. Let it pinch you a while. You'll get used to it. And the advantage of that is over the years, you'll be able to garner so much more versus when you take an arbitrary decision and say, okay, let me do 10,000 and check it out. Right. So versus that, use a percentage and use a substantial percentage. Wow.
All right. So questions here from our young audience?
I wanted to check with you on the ELSS fund. Wanted to check with you as to what is the maximum amount of money that can be invested in a year.
Okay. So this is part of the Section 80C benefit. So maximum is 1,50,000 for which you get tax deduction. Right? So that's the maximum. That does not mean that that's the maximum you can invest in the fund. Right? So it's going to be for 3 years. I know of a lot of investors who invest several crores, considering the merit of the product itself in terms of its track record and in terms of its potential, etc. So tax angle is just one small aspect. You'll have to be convinced about, first of all, investing into a 100% equity product. You should be okay with a 3-year lock-in, and having looked at its track record and potential, are you going to invest and how much? That's the key decision.
Thank you so much.
All right. Anyone else?
Is there a single window where we can invest the mutual funds across various AMCs? Like if I like 2 or 3 particular AMCs, is there a single window, or I'll have to invest in each of them separately?
Okay, if you're looking at a platform, so a place where you can, so there are these platforms that are provided by people where you would write a single check and then the advisor would distribute your money across different companies. But at the end of the day, the money is going to a whole variety of companies. So you can use that platform, write a single check, or if you could do it yourself and direct debits to various 4 or 5 or 6 different mutual funds that you want to invest with, ultimately you will have a folio number with each one of them. In the previous instance, through a platform, you will have a account number and your money is getting distributed through a power of attorney. In the second instance, you have direct ownership, you've got folio numbers which are going to identify your ownership of those investments.
Anyone else?
Hi, the question I want to ask is like for equity based, like when I invest in stocks, people say that you invest like a certain amount, right? Don't invest really small amounts. Does that same logic apply in mutual funds? is that should I invest small amounts or should I look at a little bigger chunk so that's easier to track?
See, first of all, mutual funds themselves are fairly diversified. If you take any scheme, it will have 30, 35, if not more number of schemes, and number of stocks. And then if you invest into 2 or 3 different mutual funds, you're going to be investing in probably 60 or 70 different unique stocks, so to say. So that way it's fairly diversified. You're not taking company specific or stock specific risk here. Ultimately what you're getting exposure to is a market exposure, plus of course the fund manager trying to add value, right? A combination of this is what you're kind of betting on, so to say, but not specifically on a company. Against this, if you choose to invest into a particular stock, right, there if your call goes wrong, it can be awfully wrong, which is why this generic advice which comes through saying that you'll have to be very careful when it comes to investing directly into stocks, reduce your exposure, etc. I think it's got its, it's coming from there.
Okay, thank you so much, audience. Thank you, gentlemen, for those very, very valuable insights. With that, it's a wrap of this episode of Mutual Fund Day Life Hacks. Hope you enjoyed those insights and hope the episode helps you grow and manage your money better. We'll be back with lots more next time. Till then, thanks for joining us. Goodbye.
Reliance Mutual Fund and CNBC TV18 present Mutual Fund Day, Mission Prosperity.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.